Welcome to Rise and Shine Daily Business Tech Boost with me, Charly Leetham. If you're a small business owner looking to simplify technology and get real, actionable advice from someone with 35 years of IT experience, you're in the right place. Every episode, I'll dive into tools and systems like email, CRM, marketing and tracking, and break them down into bite-sized tips you can use right away. Your time is valuable, so let's get straight to the point. It's time to work smarter, not harder. Rise and shine, eat your daily dose of business tech inspiration with me, Charly Leetham. Episode number 388, we're going to be talking about zero trust security models and why you want it for your business. I've got to say, I actually went and did a little bit of research on this one. There's always jargon, isn't there? There's always jargon and words that are used. And I thought zero trust. It's new. That's a newish one. It's been around for a long time, of course, but it's newish in some respects. I'm like, what is it? Let me see if I can break this down into plain English words. Pretty much it means never trust, always verify. It is a cybersecurity framework. It's based on the principle of never trust, always verify. And that might sound strange because that's really what we've been talking about all the way through this series is making sure you're identifying people, making sure they're verifying themselves, making sure they have the right levels of access to things. And this all comes back into this zero trust security model for your business. Let me see if I can give you a little bit more on that one. What this framework assumes is that threats can come from both the inside and outside of an organization. So no entity, whether that be a user, a device, or a system, is trusted by default, even if it's within the corporate network. Access is granted only after strict verification and continuous monitoring is enforced. So what that means is that, and again, I've spoken about this throughout this series that I've been doing. It's about the fact that you've got to have strong passwords. You've got to have two-factor authentication. You've got to have the right level of access control to systems, data, information that people are trying to access. So you don't ever trust that one person logs in or gets access, connects to the network, and they have access to everything. That's always trust. We've got to we come back from that to say, no, it's never trust. You want access to that, you need to give me your user ID. You need to give me a password. You need to verify yourself using biometrics or something. I'm going to come into all of that. But that's what the zero trust security model is about. The reason you want to do it is that there is no implicit trust. Traditional security models sometimes assume, well, the older security models, not so much now, but the older security models often assume that anyone inside the network is trustworthy, which means once they've connected to the network and they've logged into the domain, they can have access to all the servers, all the information, all the email on that side of the network. No, zero trust doesn't do that. What does continuous verification means? It means that every request to access a resource is verified in real time, regardless of whether the user or device is already inside the network perimeter. Okay, I'm trying not to read from my notes here too much. I know I want to sort of get in and give you some plain English stuff on that. That doesn't necessarily mean that every time you want to access a new resource, it's going to ask you to enter your username and password. But what it will do is it will look and it will see if you've got the right security token on your device that says, yes, you've been verified. You've been verified at this time on this date, and you've been verified for this amount of time. If you disconnect from the network, it will normally remove that security token. So the next time you reconnect to the network, it's going to ask you to log in and verify yourself again. But every system that you access goes looking for that security token. Now I'm simplifying it down. It's not as easy as all of this. There's a lot more that goes into it. But if you can just imagine that, yes, I'm Charly. There's my username and password. There's my biometric or my two-factor authentication verification, and it gives me a stamp on the hem, basically like getting in and out of a nightclub. There's a sorry, there's the verification that you've got access to this level of resource for this particular point in time, and every system in the network that you try to access goes to look for that verification, goes to look for that stamp on the hand. It's also about granular access control, so granting the least privilege basis possible to people who connect into the network, who get access to the network. They get the level of permission they need to be able to perform the specific tasks they need. You don't just make everyone an admin, you don't just make everyone a manager, you don't give everyone access to all of the folders in your shared folder system. They get access to the folders that they need access to, and only when they need access to them. So there we go. So I'm just going to run through my notes here. So the core components of Zero Trust, and I have been highlighting them through all of this, is your user verification, username, password, multi-factor authentication, and or biometric verification that will ensure users are who they claim to be. Biometrics may be a thumbprint, it may be an eye print, it may be facial recognition. I have to say that I have a high level of distrust of biometric verification. So I'm always interested. I always kind of laugh a little when I see that. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to give you my face. I don't want you to verify me by my face. Device verification. So your devices must meet certain security standards as well. So if I bring my phone in, or I bring my own my own laptop in and connect it into the network is set up, the device, the way the systems on the network are set up so that when you connect in, it checks that you've got up-to-date software, it checks that you've got encrypted devices, drives, it checks that you're not got software on there that you shouldn't have on there, and you're giving other people access to the network simply by having that piece of software on there. So your devices must also meet those security standards, and your system should be configured to say, no, that device there doesn't meet our security standard, it cannot connect to the network. It's too easy to bring in a compromised device, put it on the network, and compromise your network, compromise your accesses that way. Data protection is another component of the Zero Trust model. Sensitive data should be encrypted both in transit and at rest. I've spoken about this in other episodes in this series, and access to it should be tightly restricted. So we talk about role-based access controls. You can go down to specific user-based access controls. Data shouldn't just be accessible by everyone. Your finance information should only be accessible by your management team and your finance team and maybe a couple of others. Your general employee doesn't need access to the financial system. Customer information, customer sensitive information should only be accessible by a certain number of people within the organization. Not everyone needs access to it. Not everyone needs to know the date of birth of that particular client. Only certain people need access to that. So that's what we mean by data protection. We've talked about segmentation and micro-segmentation. The network needs to be divided into smaller zones, and access to each zone should be strictly controlled. So, you might have your finance team over here and they're on one segment. You might have your support team over here on another segment. They can't connect to each other's segments. So you are now introducing space and separation between the segments. So if one gets compromised, the other may not. You're reducing that level of that level of risk to your business. And finally, make sure you've got your monitoring and your analytics and your reporting in place. Make sure that you can go back through audit logs and have a look at things. Make sure you are actually looking at the reports that are generated from your systems. So they're your core components of Zero Trust. Going to give you a couple of examples. I mean, I can keep going with all of this stuff. There's so many notes on it, but let me give you a couple of examples that might help you out, might help you understand how a Zero Trust system really works. A remote employee, let's call them Alex, for example, wants to access the company's internal systems from a personal laptop. So there we go. They're remote. They want to use their own laptop for Alex to be able to connect into the network. Not only does he have to use his username and password, and he's got to use multi-factor authentication. It could be a one-time code sent to his phone. It could be the app on his device that sends him the code to use. But multi-factor authentication is part of it. The zero trust system will check when Alex logs in, whether his security patches are up to date, and whether his IP address is from a known or trusted location. Now, I can come back to that one. You can actually restrict access to networks based on IP address location. So if you know you've got employees that are connecting in from America, for example, into your Australian system, and they're only allowed to connect in from America, you can block IP addresses from other countries in the world. So that if they move to another country and they're trying to get into your network, they get cut off. If someone compromises their computer from another country and they're trying to use their username, password, multi-factor authentication, it is possible to hack it, unfortunately. Not as easy as it sounds, but it is possible. And they're in another country, the IP address doesn't match, they're not allowed access, they're not given access. And finally, the systems can, it's a little nebulous. Is there anything else that seems off? Is the device not encrypted? Uh, if anything else seems off like that, if it's like the device isn't encrypted, access can be denied, or the access can be restricted to low risk resources until that can be rectified. So that's one example of a remote work solution scenario. The other one that I like here, there's another one here, is protecting a financial database. So let's say Sarah needs access to a database containing customer credit card information. Again, under the Zero Trust application, Sarah has to identify who she is through her credentials. And in this case, because it's financials, they've decided they're going to go with biometric authentication. The database access is restricted to read-only because of her role. And every query or access request she makes is logged and analyzed for unusual behavior. So your software can do a lot of that automatically now. There's some real smarts around software. You can say that doesn't seem right, and here's where it might not seem right. Sarah suddenly tries to download large amounts of data or access areas of the database beyond her role. Her session that gets flagged and access is immediately blocked. Now she has to go and find someone to say, why did I get blocked? And they can go and look at the logs and go, well, why were you trying to download the customer credit card numbers? Now, if that's someone who has actually managed to compromise the network, get through all of the physical security on the network, and has now got into the database, you now have that extra level of protection to say they can't have access. They can't get that information because this person shouldn't have that information. And again, that's why role-based access control is really important too. I'm going to talk about the Internet of Things because we did that as a episode a couple of episodes ago. IoT, Internet of Things device management in healthcare. So a hospital will use connected medical devices, i.e. heart monitors, to monitor their patients. This is quite a common thing, right? They've got the heart monitors on, they're all connected up, and they alert on devices for the nurses and the doctors. Each device is registered with a unique identifier and it must authenticate to the hospital's network. So it's not just that, you get these devices, they go on and, oh yeah, everyone's got access. They've got a unique identifier. That unique identifier will track to a patient, of course, while it's on that patient, but it's also authenticated to the hospital network. So people know that that device should have access to the network. The access to the patient data is limited to the doctors and nurses who are authorized to have it. So it's not every doctor and nurse in the hospital will have access to it. It is only the ones that need it will get access to it. And then they can only view data for their assigned patients. So do you see how we're bringing it down from everyone can have access to only these people can have access? And out of these people who can have access, they can only have access to this one and this one and this one. So you're really segmenting it down. You're really limiting liability as to who can or can't get access to the information that is being provided on your network. Finally, if the device behaves abnormally, is it starting to send data to an unknown IP address, it automatically disconnects and an alert goes out to to say, go and inspect this data. So if we go back to the Mirai bot network example that I did a couple of days ago, where these cameras, these devices that were internet connected started just transmitting large amounts of data out into the network, the software has now been updated so that no, that's not normal behavior. Cut it off. Stop it. Stop the data going out. Okay, so the things that we need to think about when we're talking about zero trust security is we need strong authentication methods, and we need to implement multi-factor authentication, whether that is multi-factor authentication or biometric data. We need to segment our network into smaller parts so that users can only access the parts of the network that they need to access, that they're required to access. We need analytics on the network to look at anomalies in user or device behavior and respond appropriately. Everything needs to be encrypted. Data in transit, data at rest needs to be encrypted. So if someone does happen to get access to the network traffic while it's in transit, they can't read it, or it's much more difficult for them to read it. Or if they get physical access to the devices where this information is stored, it's much more difficult for them to read that data because it's encrypted. So they've got to break the encryption. So they've not only got into the device, they've now got to break the encryption to see what's on it. And finally, analytics and reporting. Monitor continuously. Ensure all your activities are logged and that you're analyzing them. You can get software that analyzes them automatically. I'd also recommend every now and again going back and doing a manual review of what you're seeing in your logs. That's a zero trust model. A zero trust model, just going back up to the top here, making sure I get the right words. Never trust, always verify. I know it sounds horrible, but we are talking about protecting our clients. We are talking about protecting our businesses. We are talking about protecting our suppliers. So never trust, always verify. Great model to put in place. You will find that most of what you're doing today falls into that regime. You may find that you need to change a couple of things up, though, to make sure that you are actually meeting these really great standards to protect your customer business. All right, guys, what do you think? I know that sounds specky and all of that. That is my last episode in my cybersecurity series. I hope you've enjoyed this. I don't even know how many episodes I've done now in this series. There's lots of information there, though. Please feel free to go back and review any of the episodes. You can find them on my blog. You can find them wherever you are watching or listening to this video or this audio. I'm on all the podcast networks. I hope you get something out of it. If you need any help at all, I'm here to help. I've got cybersecurity people that I can put you through to. Go and find a cybersecurity person that you can talk to. Get assistance. Make sure that you are protected. Make sure you're protecting yourself and your clients and your suppliers. Please, please, please leave comments wherever you're watching or listening to this video. You can send me a DM on our social media channels and I will get back to you. Come and join me on my locals community, askcharlyleetham.locals.com, and join the discussion there. If you could, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell to find out when I drop more content. And tomorrow I will be starting a new series in my Rise and Shine, your daily dose of business tech inspiration. See you tomorrow, guys. Bye. Hey there, thanks so much for tuning in to Rise and Shine, your daily business tech boost. I hope today's episode gave you some actionable insights that will make your business tech work smarter for you. If you found value, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other small business owners who could use a daily boost. For more tips, tools, and resources, visit www.askcharlyleetham.com. Until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and let's make tech simple together.